On the previous episode of Where'd You Go, you tuned in to our journey to Italy, where we discussed all the glorious landmarks and talked about a couple of tourist traps to look out for. This time, we'll take you to the city of Vienna in Austria.
Austria? Well then, good day, mate. Let's put another shrimp on the barbie.
Let's not. Vienna can be described in two words: museums and palaces. Even if you're not the museum type, Vienna is one of the best cities to walk around. A combination of the colorful foliage and incredible architecture, you can easily lose track of time wandering through the city. This episode will also feature everyone's favorite topic. That's right, food. So stick around, you will not want to miss this one. Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on what time that you're tuning in. I'm just glad that you're here. My name is Hunter. I'm the host of the Where'd You Go show, and you're probably wondering where I'm at right now. So I'm in the capital of Greece, Athens. I'm recording live from my balcony in front of a live audience of mosquitoes. It's kind of weird because it's December, but the mosquitoes are still here in force. So unwanted guests, but we're going to make the best of it. If you're tuning in to the video, you got a special treat right now. So if you're listening audio only, there's some incentive to go over to my YouTube channel and take a look at this episode. But you can see that there's other buildings around here. You can see my laundry that's trying to dry right now. We got a little bit of cloud coverage right now. And the weather is amazing. I'm in my t-shirt and it's December and I'm not even cold. This is amazing weather. It's quite a bit different from where we came from. We flew in from Amsterdam, where it was cold and rainy, and it's 30 degrees. Right now, it's a nice sunny 60 degrees, so it's absolutely fantastic. I can't complain about it. But anyway, today we're going to catch you up on my trip. We're going to talk about the second destination, Vienna, Austria. So today I'm going to share all the things that we did in Austria, all the other cool things that we didn't get to do that you can go see. And we're going to talk about an article I stumbled across about Austria. It's titled 11 Things Not to Do in Austria. So I'll give you my experience around all those 11 categories. And then there's somebody over there. That's hilarious. And then we're also going to talk about food, which is probably my favorite subject. I love food, and the food has been amazing here, so I can't wait to share that with you. But first things first, I'm going to talk about all the famous people from Austria. Coming into Austria, didn't really know, too much about it. I knew that they spoke German. I know it's right by Germany. But everybody knows who Arnold Schwarzenegger is, the Austrian death machine himself. He's probably the most famous Austrian. But I didn't know that Beethoven and Mozart, they're both from Austria. So they had a pretty cool music scene back in the day. Some legends just battling it out there. Also, some other actors. You may remember Christoph Waltz from such films like Django Unchained or Inglourious Bastards. Me trying to do my best Troy McClure impression. And then Sigmund Freud. He's a very famous psychiatrist. Very, very profound. So yeah, they have a museum dedicated to Sigmund Freud. And also, if you're a nerd like me, there's a lot of Austrian economics professors that founded the School of Austrian Economics in Vienna University. Some big names are Ludwig von Mises, F.A. Hayek, and Karl Menger. So if you're a nerd of free market economics, you're probably geeking out and might want to come visit someday. Even though I couldn't really find a shred of evidence of them, which they should have. But it's still cool that you're in the same area where those principles of free market economists were there. So it's pretty cool. Franz Ferdinand was assassinated in 1914. No, not the band that does the one-hit wonder "Take Me Out." It's actually Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Yeah, he was assassinated in 1914, which kind of set off the rest of the events for World War I. So that was fascinating. That was something that I learned. And, I forgot to mention Hedy Lamarr. She's an actress from the 30s and 40s, very famous. She did a lot of films in Czechoslovakia. She was Austrian born. And then she made her debut in America as well. And she also was an inventor. Found that pretty fascinating. So not only did she act, she can actually invent some very useful things. And probably the most famous person of all, Adolf Hitler. Yes, he was Austrian. That's kind of crazy. I never knew that as well. I thought he was German born. But he came from a small town in Austria. And rumor has it that there's plenty of coffee shops that you can frequent that he frequented as well. So if you ever go to those, you might actually be sitting on an antique piece of furniture that he was sitting on. It's kind of creepy, but kind of cool. It would be a part of history. That's not many people can say that. But what I'm going to do now, we're going to move on and talk about that article. It had some really interesting things to share. We're going to go one by one. And again, there's 11 things in here not to do in Austria. The first one is mistake Austria for Germany. That one, I kind of look at it and like who does that? I mean, you got to be pretty ignorant to do that, but apparently people do, just because they both speak German, and more or less, I guess, mistaking German culture for Austrian culture. I'm sure that Austrians take a lot of pride in being different from Germany since they are a separate entity. So I would just make sure that you're not, if you are in Austria, you're not confusing German culture for Austrian culture. Because they do have their own, different food that's separate from Germany. They have their own likes and dislikes. So, just because they speak the same language doesn't mean they're exactly the same culture. So that's one thing. Don't mistake Austria for Germany, and vice versa. Here's one that says, forget to tip waiters. So, I was told coming to Europe that you don't really need to tip, and it's true. For the most part, all these restaurants, they pay very good wages. It's not like in America where they pay below minimum wage, and then the tips are what they make. Here, they get paid very well, and a tip is almost considered just like a little bit extra for the waiter. If they provided some fantastic service, go ahead and give them a couple euros. Don't tip like we do in America, 15 to 20%. It's actually considered kind of disrespectful. It's very uncultured of us to do that. I know that we're it's ingrained in us to do that. But when you're here, it's actually kind of considered a slap in the face. It's almost like, hey, I don't get, you're saying that I don't get paid enough. So I would just make sure if you tip, just give if you have some extra coins, some euros, you're going to have a lot of those if you pay with cash. Just leave those a couple on your table or just hand it straight to your waiter. But I guess in Austria, they tip more than they do in other parts of Europe. So wherever you're going, just be careful and know some of the cultures, the differences between some of these cultures. The third one is ignore the highway code. So, of course, when you're walking across the crosswalk, you're going to see the green walk sign. Make sure you don't ignore those, of course. Now, when I was over there, sometimes the streets would be completely empty and it's midday. There's not a single car around. I would see people just jaywalking across the street. So that one's probably not followed even by the locals, but just be careful. Don't try to walk out in the middle of the street when there's a lot of cars. I mean, it's just use common sense. That one's pretty obvious. Expect stores to be open on Sunday. Yeah, that's pretty much true anywhere you go in Europe. When I was in Italy, pretty much all the stores were shut down as far as food places go. We were really hungry, didn't have any groceries at the time, and I'm wandering around man, is any place open? And I had to walk pretty far to find a place that was actually open. So it's pretty true in Austria. Same thing. I was walking around looking for food places to eat at, and pretty much the only place open was McDonald's, so had to deal with it. This one is B2 Snap Happy, and what that means is with photos. So when you're in Europe, you're seeing all the cool things, you're straining your neck, looking around, and you want to take pictures of everything. I'm very, very guilty of this. I love to take photos and videos. Just be mindful of your surroundings. Don't try to take a picture in the middle of the sidewalk where it's busy and everyone's walking, you're trying to walk by. Don't get in the way of people. It's very frustrating. And I have to take this one as some advice for myself, because I immediately think, oh, I got to take a picture of that. Just be mindful and stand somewhere on the side and try to get a good angle if you can. But I mean, trying to walk and take a photo or a video, it can be difficult. So just be mindful of your surroundings. This one is mistake the nationality of schnitzel or strudel. Now, Wiener Schnitzel, of course, is strictly from Vienna. That area. I thought Wiener Schnitzel was actually like a deep fried hot dog or something, but it's actually way different than I expected. It's actually deep fried veal, but it's not in the shape of like a wiener. It's like almost like country fried steak. It's kind of flat, and it's deep fried. It comes with served with like a lemon on top. There's not really many juices that people eat it with, or sauces. But I guess people confuse Wiener Schnitzel for being German. They take big pride in local food there. So if you mistake schnitzel or strudel is like some type of pastry that they have. I didn't get to try it. But you've heard of toaster strudels, but it's nothing like that. But yeah, they take a lot of pride in their food, so just don't confuse the nationality of schnitzel and strudel. This one's kind of funny. Don't mention the sound of music. So I guess locals maybe get really annoyed, but if you didn't know, The Sound of Music was filmed in Salzburg, Austria, and apparently they get kind of annoyed by people talking about The Sound of Music, and I guess that makes sense. I'm trying to think of things that, I don't know, there's probably lots of things that we get annoyed about that people always ask, like I can't even think of it, but there's some things that that probably come to mind that foreigners might ask, like, ugh, like, of course, that's a typical thing to ask. So yeah, don't mention The Sound of Music. The other one is Arnold Schwarzenegger as well. They probably get tired of hearing, oh, Arnold Schwarzenegger, where's his house? Where is he from? Like, it's another thing locals probably get annoyed about. This one's kind of strange. I didn't really get it at first, but I don't know why you would ask somebody this, but apparently it happens. Ask if they wear lederhosen. If you've ever seen like, the typical Germans from the Alps, or like Austrians, they might wear those really tight, like, leather type of trousers with the suspenders and the weird little hat. Don't ask if they wear lederhosen. I guess it's like Scottish for like, hey, do you wear a kilt? So yeah, don't bother asking if they wear that. Fare dodge. This is reference to going on the bus or the tram. Pay for your tickets. Don't try to dodge them. I know they're kind of cheap and it's kind of a hassle, but don't fare dodge, because a lot of the times it's based on the honor system. Most of the time they're not going to check, but they might have random searches. So just be aware of that. Just always pay for your bus tickets. And then this one's pretty good. It's the last one, number 11. Assume everybody speaks English. I know it's pretty easy to get in that mindset, like, oh, most Europeans, they speak English. But I've made it a point to at least know how to say, like, do you speak English in certain languages? So, for example, German, I would say, sprechen Sie English. And I know that they appreciate your attempt to at least try to communicate in their language. I know that you're not going to have a ton of time to learn everything. But at least giving that effort of saying, do you speak English in their language? I'm sure they're more likely to help you out. So yeah, that covers that document. I can put that in the show notes on YouTube, as well as if you're listening to Spotify. If you want to take a look at the deep dive on that list about the culture and everything, there's plenty of cool articles like that that you can research before you go out to any country. So I like reading those. It's a joy to read, and I like comparing my experience to those articles. Yeah, but moving on, we're going to talk about some of the things that you can do in Austria, or specifically Vienna, because we stayed a week in there. I can't really speak about other cities, but I can at least talk about some of them. But in the introduction, I did mention that Vienna can be summarized in 2 words: museums and palaces. It's 100% true. They are everywhere in Vienna. If you love those types of things, highly suggest getting out to Vienna. There's a museum for just about everything. Like I mentioned, there's a Sigmund Freud museum. They have a Mozart house, which is a museum. I think it's actually Mozart's house where he used to live. Beethoven Museum, if you're a big fan of piano and music, highly suggest that. And probably the biggest museum that they have there, it's an art museum called the Albertina. There's a cool horse statue out in front that a lot of people take pictures of. I know I took a couple pictures and videos. But they have art pieces numbered in the millions. So if you're a huge fan of art, sculptures, paintings, you name it, it's a huge deal to people in Austria. So, and people come over from all over the world to take a look at the Albertina. I highly recommend that. Palaces. I'm actually a huge fan of palaces and mansions. I think they're so cool. There's the Hofburg Palace, which is in the heart of Vienna. That's actually where the current residential palace for the president of Austria. So that's super cool. You can take a tour of it. The outside is really cool. There's a courtyard. There's horse and carriages coming out from the courtyard, taking people around the city. So that's super fascinating. There's Belvedere Palace. That's a really, I mean, there's just numerous palaces. If you look at Google Maps and search palaces, there's things popping up everywhere. The one that we went to Schoenbrunn Palace, and that one's probably the most famous one in Vienna, just because of its size, and it was a summer residence for the Habsburgs. The Habsburgs is a monarchy, a German monarchy. They've ruled that area for years and years and years. So their family used to stay there in the summertime, and then the Hofburg Palace is kind of more of like the main station that they were housed in. But the Schoenbrunn Palace, it's fantastic. The best part about it is that going into the courtyard and gardens are absolutely free. So I was surprised by that, and it was actually something that we took advantage of. Didn't get to go inside. When you're doing a long-term vacation, you got to pick and choose which places that you want to spend money at. That just wasn't one of them. I'm sure it's fantastic inside, and it's probably not that expensive. I think it was about 10 or 15 euros. But if you want to experience Europe for free, go to the gardens. It's absolutely fantastic. The courtyard is just massive. They have like really cool fountains. There's statues everywhere. And then the coolest part is you get to walk up this windy road all the way up to the top of this hill. And there's this structure called the Gloriette. It's this like long rectangular building. And it's got statues all around it. There's glass windows. You can even go up to the top, and you get a panoramic view of all of Austria. And it's really good photo opportunity. But the Gloriette's super cool. And then you get to take a look down at the Schoenburn Palace and all the courtyard. It's just a really cool view. It was really busy when we went there. We kind of went towards the end of the day, but it's just a short subway ride. About 4 stops from where we were staying at, all the way over to Schoenburn Palace. So that was probably my highlight highlight of Vienna, Austria, is Schoenbrunn Palace. There's lots of other things that you can do besides palaces and museums. There's something called Prater Vienna, and it's actually like a carnival. There's an outdoor carnival park area dedicated. I think it goes year round. I'm not sure, but it's really cool. Didn't get a chance to go. I saw some pictures, but you get a neat perspective of their culture and cool things that you can do. If you like roller coasters, I would definitely go and check it out. They got food, beer, entertainment. I believe that's actually free to go to as well. If you want to ride the rides and pay for food, that's the only thing that you got to pay for. One thing I'm really disappointed that I didn't get to do was go to Kapuzinger Crypt. There's lots of different names for this, but essentially what it is it's a church, and underneath the church they have family members of the Habsburg monarchy buried underneath the church, but you can go underneath it, and I think it's about 10 euros or 7 or 10 euros a person. Very cheap. Oh no, it was 8 euros, I remember. Very cheap, but it's a church, and you go underneath, and there's 145 bodies buried underneath there. But the coolest thing is, and I saw pictures of it, the family members are buried in these elaborate coffins and the caskets. They have like really cool looking like skulls on them, like really gothic, like vampire looking type of thing you might see in vampire movies. It almost reminds you of like a vampire crypt. The reason I didn't get to go see it is I went on a holiday, and that's another thing you got to be mindful of is holidays when you're in Europe. There's some that you've probably never heard of. I tried to go on All Saints Day, which is the day after Halloween. And All Saints Day is it's kind of like I don't know if it's like a Catholic or a Christian type of holiday, but they celebrate all the saints that are dead rising up and going to heaven. So I thought that was fascinating, but I show up to the church, and it was kind of hard to find because there was a lot of construction. But I go up to the church, and I peer through the window. I'm like, oh my God, they're doing a service, a full-blown church service. And I read on the sign that they weren't allowing any tours because it was All Saints Day. And I was like, man. So just be careful of that. That's the reason I didn't get to go. And it was the last day that we had. So, oh well, it's a bummer. But yeah, just a lesson for me to be mindful of that. The place that we were staying at, our Airbnb, was directly across from this farmer's market. It was super cool. So they had a bunch of vegetables and fruit stands, but it's this really, really, really long a green building type thing. They're all connected together. And there's just restaurants, cafes, all sorts of stuff that you can go and eat at. So it was really cool. Glad we were there. It was called the Nosh Mart. I think half of it was open due to like COVID restrictions. But really neat area to walk down and just take a walk. It's very busy. Lots of good food places there. So I'm glad that we stayed literally right across the street from it. What else? Oh, this is really cool. We didn't get to go because it was super busy, but you can understand why. Cafe Central, and there's two different locations to this. Cafe Central is the actual coffee shop. It's a high-scale coffee shop. It's got like really cool pillars, marble floors. There's a dude playing the piano. But yeah, very high scale. Apparently this is a coffee shop where Sigmund Freud frequented it, and Leo Tolstoy, he's an author. And legend has it that Adolf Hitler was frequenting Cafe Central as well. So if you want to be a part of history, I would highly suggest going to Cafe Central. Other cities in Austria. Hallstatt is a very small mining town, but it's very, very, very popular. Lots of tourists visit there all year round, mainly in the summer, just because the winter is very, very harsh here. But Hallstatt, what makes it really cool is you may or may not have seen pictures of it, but it's a town right on the side of a lake, and then there's mountains in the background, and it's just absolutely beautiful pictures that I've seen. But what's really cool is you can still go tour the salt mines, and apparently you can go down these wooden chutes and underneath and tour the salt mines. So that's something cool if you're planning on staying in Austria for a long time and touring around the whole country. I would highly recommend stopping in Hallstatt. Salzburg, I mentioned that earlier. If you're a big Sound of Music fan, they have lots of places where they filmed the movie there. And then they have bus tours that you can do for dedicated strictly to the Sound of Music. Ehrenberg is a small city, but they actually have a castle, like a huge fortress. I think it's Fort Claudia. So it's like a retro-looking, like medieval type of castle. That's another thing that you can do. That's on the far west side of Austria. If you haven't seen The Shape of Austria, it almost kind of reminds me like the shape of Kentucky. So on the east side, it's very, very big. And then down towards the west side, it gets very narrow. That's on the east side, and I think Ehrenberg might border Germany. And then Innsbruck is a big one too. Lots of people go skiing there in the wintertime, so it's a big destination for skiers and snowboarders. So if you want to check out Innsbruck, that's a thing. And Graz is another, I think I'm saying it right, Graz. Graz is another frequented city in Austria. Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. But Austria, or Vienna as a whole, was a really cool city to walk around in. I really enjoyed looking at all the cool buildings. It's a very, very walkable city, which I appreciate. But I think one of my favorite things to do is just walk around at night, especially around the holidays, because they got lights everywhere, plenty of good food places, and lots of cool, like, fantastic buildings, and just seeing their government buildings was really cool. So highly recommend just walking around if you're in Vienna, and seeing all the cool stuff. You probably hear that alarm right now. It's really annoying. Athens is crazy. It's a very, very busy street. But yeah, it's a very busy Monday morning right now. Let's move on to our topic of this episode. We're going to transition into food. One of the few books I bought with me is by Rick Steves. I picked it up in Barnes & Noble. I'm like, I got to get one book that I can bring, because can't bring too much stuff with you when you're going on a long-term vacation. You don't want to drag everything around and make your suitcase heavy, which I did anyway. But you got limited room. So bought a Rick Steves book. It's called Europe Through the Back Door. And found this quote fascinating. It says, eating in Europe is sightseeing for your taste buds. And couldn't agree more with that. If you really want to get a good grasp of their culture, you're going to start trying some of their food that they make here. I love food. So let me see. Yeah, I'm going to share a story with you, our experience with some Austrian food. So one morning me and my wife got breakfast, and we were looking around on Yelp, and that's one thing that's kind of hard, is figuring out what place you want to eat at. There's so many options, and sometimes Yelp is very limited to what the restaurants that they have. So you kind of just got to go pick one. And it's hard to go off of reviews. But we picked this place called Volpension. And when we got there, apparently Austria is very well known for the grumpy waiters. And I kind of didn't believe that. I'm like, it's probably just a culture thing. But we get there, and the guy asks, if we had a reservation. And after figuring out that we speak English, and then I was like, oh no, we don't have a reservation. He almost got very upset, and he's like, like he had to figure something out, and I felt kind of bad. I'm like, well, maybe we should have made a reservation. But anyway, the coffee shop is really, really cool. It's almost like it looks like an antique shop. It's got very old furniture, like small couches, coffee tables. There's cool paintings on the wall, old pictures, old phones, all sorts of stuff you'd probably see in an antique shop. But anyway, he's struggling to find a spot for us because it was a pretty popular spot. And what's really interesting about that place, and probably pretty common, is you have to pay for time that you're spending there. So you can't just sit there all day and read a book and sip your coffee for a couple hours. So depending on what you order, you bought your certain amount of time to sit there. So that way they can shuffle in new guests. And it makes sense. And then they tell you, based on what you order on the menu, how much time that gives you. So they sat us down, me and my wife. There was only a spot next to these people on a couch. So we had to share a small coffee table, very small couch. And then my wife Taylor was sitting to the right of me on her own little chair. But we're all hunched over, trying to drink our coffee. And there's food everywhere. Everybody's food is like falling on each other's plates. It's just kind of awkward, but kind of funny. And I'm trying to make sure I'm giving them room, like I'm all crunched in. But kind of a funny scenario. Anyway, the food I got, it was just the absolute most typical Austrian thing that you can imagine. What I ordered was a pretzel with mustard, and it was good spicy brown mustard, and veal sausage. I thought it was just going to be like a link, like a big link. But what was really funny, that was it was delivered in this little bowl of like hot dog water and had chives in it. And these two little links that were stuck together were just chilling in this sketchy hot dog water. We were looking at each other like, that's kind of disgusting. And the sausage doesn't even look like it's cooked. It looks like it's kind of barely boiled. And I'm like, well, when in Austria, I guess. But the good thing is pretty delicious. And the funny thing is, my breakfast came with a beer, and it did not say that on the menu. I mean, I'm not a beer drinker. I don't drink whatsoever. But I was kind of cracking up when they brought it out. This little tiny thing of beer, and I'm like, wow, I guess beer must be complimentary with their breakfast here. And I felt obligated to drink it. I'm like, man, I don't like drinking alcohol. I don't really like it. But I'm like, well, come on, it's the Austrian experience, and I don't want to be rude not drinking stuff that they serve me that's complimentary. So I ended up drinking it, and sure enough, I actually liked it. This is the first time I've actually said that I've enjoyed something that was alcohol. So new experience, and that's what happens when you try something new. You actually might like it. It was a very light beer, and maybe I like light beer. Could be a light beer drinker, so opening the door for myself. But yeah, the meal was really good. The pretzel was nice and soft. The mustard was fantastic. Me and my wife were kind of joking about the hot dog water. I'm like, are you supposed to drink it? Do they expect me to drink it like a bowl of soup? But there was no way in hell I was going to drink that. But I almost, as a joke, asked for it in a little to-go cup, but that probably would have been rude. So you don't want to be rude, and something that might be funny to you might not be funny to other people, but we had a good laugh about that. But yeah, that was the most typical Austrian meal I could have thought of. But the funny thing is, I have these socks that have beer, sausage, and pretzels on them, and I was wearing them that morning, and I did not plan that. But it was kind of a funny coincidence that I was ready to go. But yeah, that's my experience with the Austrian breakfast. I'm going to talk about breakfast in general in Europe. European breakfast is completely different from what we're used to in America. In America, we eat a very hearty breakfast of like eggs, sausage, bacon, potatoes, very, very hearty. And I love American breakfast. So I've been kind of struggling with breakfast here. Usually consists of pastries, croissants, coffee, of course, which, hey, I'm cool with coffee. Love coffee. But it's very simple, very straightforward. There's yogurts and granolas that they eat here. But apparently the further north you get in Europe, they have more heartier breakfasts. So maybe in like Germany, Scandinavia, in the UK, they eat more hearty breakfasts. They have more meat. But in Italy, France, Greece, it's a little bit more dainty. They don't really eat too much in breakfast. So that's a huge difference. But, I mean, if you're really craving a hearty breakfast, you can find some type of breakfast joint here. It may not be what you're used to, but it's there if you want it. But yeah, that's pretty much breakfast. Coffee. Coffee is huge in Europe, and I can appreciate that. Being in Italy, I got my first experience of European coffee, and Italy is just the mecca for espresso. So typically what coffee is there is they'll just straight up drink little things of espresso. A lot of the times people aren't really sitting down. You'll have a mixture of people, dining, eating breakfast and sipping on coffee, or lots of people will just do it for breakfast in the morning before they go to work. They'll just be at the bar, sip their little espresso, and then just take off. But coffee, yeah, they only add a little bit of, they'll add various amounts of hot water, but it all starts with espresso. So they'll add hot water, maybe they'll add some milk with a latte. And if you like cold coffee, which I'm a huge fan of, I'm not a big hot coffee drinker, so I was struggling at first to find some cold coffee. It's not as common as it is in America. A lot of times I've asked places, hey, do you have cold coffee? And they'll say no. Like, they'll kind of laugh at me. It's like, why would we have that? So be aware that if you're out here, if you're a cold coffee drinker, not a big thing out here, but it is available. In Italy, it's called Caffè Freddo. Freddo means cold. And you can ask that anywhere. They even have it here in Greece. If you say Caffè Freddo, a lot of the times they know what you're talking about. And then ask if you... and what's really important is that if you know some certain phrases, like if you like sugar, know what the word sugar is in the different languages, so that way you can kind of communicate. Because a lot of the times if you go to places... they may not speak good English, but if you can show that you can communicate certain ingredients with them, they'll know what you're talking about. So in Italy, sugar is Zucker. In German, it's very close. I think it's Zucca. It's spelled Zucke. I think so. But I've been trying to learn a lot of languages, so everything is blending together right now. But yeah, if you love coffee, Europe's a great destination for coffee. The funny thing in Italy is they did not have a single Starbucks. It does not exist there, which I think is cool. Is they're kind of giving a middle finger to the American coffee drinkers. It's like, yeah, we don't want your coffee here. We do it better than you. So I thought that was pretty funny, and good for them. I thought Italian coffee was amazing. I love espresso. I like the strong taste of it. So if you're a big espresso fan, you're going to have a really good time in Italy. So yeah, that's pretty much the summary on coffee. They do have Starbucks in other places if you're really craving it. There's no shame in going there, getting your favorite drink that you're used to. But coffee is a big thing here. I'm going to talk about restaurant dining as well. That's huge here. I think if you're going to get some of the best meals that you can in Europe, go out and dine in a restaurant. I've had some of my best meals sitting down in a nice restaurant. And what's really cool is that my favorite part about the restaurants out here is they have the menus outside. They'll usually have like a little stand. You can flip through the book. A lot of the times they'll have it in English, which is nice. So you're not sitting there taking a picture of the menu, having to translate it on your phone. And then they give you the prices too outside, so that way it can let you know if this place is like way too expensive, it's too fancy, get out of there. Or if it's affordable and you like some of the items in there, go ahead and go inside. And they'll have pictures as well, just in case you can't read. You can just point to it, like, hey, I want that. But that's my favorite part. I wish more restaurants did that in America. I'm sure places like San Diego, I think, do that. A lot of places on the beach, they're pretty famous for putting like their menus in the windows and stuff. But it's like that everywhere here. And it's more typical to do that in places that are surrounding like landmarks. So they try to cater to people that speak English and tourists that are coming through. But again, if you tuned into the last episode, I gave the tips of trying not to go into restaurants where they're persuading you and they got waiters outside trying to get you to come in. Just be careful of eating at places that are directly by landmarks. Sometimes they're too expensive, sometimes they're not. So just try to use your best judgment and don't overthink it too much. If you know going into it that you don't care about spending too much money, then be my guest and pick something that looks good. But there's all sorts of trade-offs. I suggest going to a local mom and pop shop. Those are probably the best bang for your buck. They're usually a lot cheaper. And also the food can actually be quite better. My rule of thumb is I like to pick places that are pretty busy. That means that the locals trust it and it's probably good food if there's a lot of people there. Try to avoid places where it's literally empty and nobody's sitting at and eating at. Usually means that it's not a good place. So I would try to do some research, go on Yelp. And again, not every place is on Yelp. You'll be walking around like, dude, I didn't even find this on Google Maps. I would adventure to go in there and try out some of their food. But if you're a planner and like to do research and like to be prepared, be my guest. Go on Yelp. TripAdvisor is a big one if they don't have the place on Yelp. Foursquare is a big one too. So those are the big three: Yelp, Foursquare, and TripAdvisor. Those are places that you can kind of get reviews. But if you want to make it more adventurous and walk around and find a place, go do that. There's something fun about like finding something that's kind of hidden. It's like a hidden treasure. And maybe you'll find your favorite restaurant and just frequent there. So that's a fun adventure. I like walking around and finding some restaurants that just might catch your eye. That's pretty much restaurants in a nutshell. My biggest thing is just don't overthink it. Have it be part of your adventure and just pick a place and go with it. But at the same time, you want a meal that's going to be memorable. So just do your due diligence and be adventurous and have a good balance between the two. It's honestly really hard to find something that doesn't taste good or isn't good quality out here. I haven't had a meal where I'm like, oh, that was disgusting. Like almost everything has been amazing, and especially in Italy. I think it's probably impossible to find a bad meal in Italy. But everywhere else, we've had great success. One thing that this is probably the best advice for you if you're going to a restaurant in Europe. It's really tough to know some of the customs. And when we arrived in Italy, like we were just dumbfounded. Like, how do we order? What's the custom? How do you do this? Because we were standing around on an outdoor cafe. Like, well, is somebody got to come down and sit us or, seat yourself? We didn't want to be rude and seat ourselves without, prompting a waiter. But this is pretty typical anywhere you go here. Don't be afraid to grab the waiter. Like, hey, can we sit here? Do you have any seating? And they'll direct you. You have to be assertive here. Standing around with your hands in your pocket is not going to get you anywhere. You're going to have to be assertive and let them know your intentions. And again, most people speak English, but be kind and be considerate. Know certain phrases that'll allow you to speak with them. And a lot of times they'll open up and they'll know right away. They know you're an American, or they might think you're English. They'll know right away. They'll help you out. And they're very kind. They'll take care of you. They'll ask you what you want. So yeah, they'll sit you down. And I love eating outside. Eating outside here is my favorite part. You get to see the little tiny streets. People are driving by on their scooters and their cars. It's a lot of hustle and bustle, but you get a really beautiful view of the streets. It's stuff like you see in the movies, so it's a really cool experience. And then when they sit you down, they'll ask you what you want to drink, just like an American restaurant. And this is the really funny thing, the difference between America and European restaurants is that the water. So they'll charge you for water. It comes in a bottle, so it's not free like it is in America. But it's in a nice glass bottle. You get a crisp glass of water. And the funny thing is, they'll ask you, do you want gas or no gas? And I was so confused. And I'm like, why are you asking me if I want gas? I'm going to be bloated by the end of this meal anyway, so I don't know why you're asking me. But what they mean is, do you want carbonation in your water? Because Europeans love to drink carbonation in some of their water. And they had to explain that to me. I'm like, oh, that's what that means. So I thought it was a funny way of them asking if I wanted carbonation. So I always say no. I can't stand that. I just want a nice, clean drink of water. But a lot of times they know that, but they ask you out of courtesy if you want gas in your water. And like my tip with coffee, knowing certain phrases in their language, know what it means to say with or without or carbonation or gas. Knowing some of those words will help you communicate to people that don't really speak English that much. So yeah, that's kind of funny. Big difference. Water is carbonated here. And then after you get your drinks and you're sitting down for a while, they'll bring out the meal. And when you're done eating your meal, everything is very, very slow paced. So knowing like American restaurants, when you go to Chili's or Applebee's, they're super fast. They're on the ball. They're trying to rush to get the food out. They're trying to rush to get you out so they can bring in somebody else and get that turnover of cash coming in and out the door. Here, it's nothing like that. You have to let your server know when you're ready. That goes with anything. And when you're ready to get a drink, you're ready to pay for your meal. They're not going to rush you. They'll let you sit around and enjoy, because that's part of the culture here. It's very leisurely. They like to spend their time sitting around and talking and commuting around the food. So the first couple times that we were eating out, we were literally sitting there forever, just kind of like tapping our fingers and like, do I say something? Like, are they going to bring the check? Is it rude to say, hey, like, get over here, I'm ready to pay? It's not rude. They expect you to flag them down when you're ready. So just grab their attention, wave at them and say, hey, I'm ready to pay. And they'll come bring the check to you, and you can pay. One thing I do want to let you know is that you don't need to carry a bunch of cash with you when you're going to these places. Almost every single place is going to have a card reader. So that's nice. That's really nice and convenient for you. I was kind of worried. I'm like, man, I'm going to have to like keep pulling out cash from the ATM. They're going to get me on those fees, those transaction fees. But the cool thing is I've only had to pay cash on a couple of places. So cash only places are probably stuff you're going to find like in the countryside. But in the big city, I mean, it's not primitive land out here. I know a lot of Americans think like, oh, they're not going to have the same technologies that we do. But yeah, they got card readers. They're going to read your card. You're not going to have a hard time with that. And then I would maybe carry like some coins with you if you're going to tip. Again, tipping is not necessary. It's not expected. But that's something that you can do. What else can I talk about with food? We did talk about how to order. Oh, street food. Street food is the best. It's going to be the best bang for your buck. It's going to be the cheapest food. It's going to be fast. And it's going to be the best food that you've had. I'm a huge fan of street food. When I was in China, that's all I ate was street food. It wasn't the healthiest. That's the one downside. It's not going to be healthy food. But it's delicious, it's cheap, and it's fast. You really can't beat that. Some of our favorite places that we'll eat at out here is Turkish doner stands. What that is just like your typical falafel or pita or wraps with lamb. I think durum stands for lamb. I'm not sure. But yeah, they have those everywhere out here. If we're in a pinch and we want something fast and we're craving it, I'll head straight to a Turkish doner stand. It's amazing. I mean, we've had that in America. It's not too common, but we love it out here. It's some of the best food that you can get. So, yeah, if you need something cheap and fast, I mean, there's probably a Turkish doner stand within walking distance. You're not going to have a hard time with that. There's other stuff in other countries, like in Germany and Austria. They'll have sausage stands. in the Czech Republic, there's just dudes grilling sausages everywhere around the street, and I love it. Kielbasa sausage is some of my favorite sausage. So if you're craving that, they got those stands everywhere, little corner stands where they sell burgers and fries. Lots of that everywhere. So there's fast food. Here in Greece, I've seen people grilling corn on the side of the street, so that's been funny. So if you want a grilled piece of corn, you can pay for that. Now these types of places are usually cash only. Some of them might have card readers, but I would be prepared if you're going to do street food. Cash is king with that. So that's a good thing to carry cash around for. There's also other fast food joints like American fast food. They got burger joints everywhere. They got McDonald's. They got your Burger Kings, KFCs, Subways. So I'm not going to lie. You can kind of get sick of the food out here. It can kind of be repetitive, and I honestly got sick of the Italian food. It's just pasta. There's not much variety, although it's fantastic. Pasta is some of my favorite, but you got to mix it up every once in a while. You might want to come back to your comfort food and go to Subway. There's no shame in grabbing a sandwich from Subway or a Big Mac if you're craving it. We've done it, and sometimes it's the only place that's open, and a lot of the family restaurants will close earlier. So just be aware of that. Or if it's like siesta time, they have, it's pretty common in Europe for places to be closed between 2 and 4. That's probably not a good time to go find a restaurant. They'll close up for a little bit, take their naps, come back, and they'll open them up later. Sometimes they'll open back up at 7, and they'll be open later. So just be aware of that. But yeah, there's no shortage of fast food. And the really funny thing to me is you think of like burgers being strictly an American food. They have burgers all out here, and I'm not gonna lie, I've had some of the best burgers I've had in my life in Europe. So don't look down on them. I would just go out and try to search for a burger joint. I've had some good stuff. In Italy, I had like a sausage patty burger. I had one here in Greece. They were actually fantastic. So I wouldn't discredit the fast food joints out here. Now, if you don't want to eat out all the time, you can go to some supermarkets. They've got plenty here. A lot of them, they're going to be way smaller than American ones. Like, I kind of laugh at the monstrosity that we have as American supermarkets. You go to your local Fry's, and it's like a superstore. It's just massive. It's almost overwhelming, but the amount of variety that you have in your American stores compared to tiny grocery markets here, it's just a huge difference. So that's one thing that kind of sucks shopping here is the lack of variety. But they're going to have your deli meats. They're going to have your fruits and vegetables. They're going to have pastas and other things that are local to certain countries. So if you want to save a lot of money and you got a fridge at your place, if you're staying in an Airbnb that's got kitchenware, I love staying at Airbnbs just for that reason. So that way, if I'm kind of sick of eating out and want to save some money, I'll buy a bunch of groceries and make some sandwiches or pastas or whatever it is that you make. So there's that option. And especially if you're going on long-term trips, save yourself some money and the headache of eating out all the time, because eating out can be expensive. Restaurants here are probably just as expensive as American restaurants. So it can add up if you're eating out every single night. But if you're only here for a week, like why not splurge on eating out at a fine restaurant? It's going to be way better food than some plain boring sandwich that you're going to make. So, but again, there's trade-offs, there's give and takes. Make sure you pick and choose which trade-offs are best for you in your situation. But yeah, that pretty much covers today's episode. We went over certain things not to do in Austria, all the different things that we did, some fun things that you can do. We did talk about all the food things. There's street food, supermarkets, eating out at restaurants. But yeah, that covers it. And I feel like I could have gone longer with food. I can talk about food all day. I didn't get the specifics of what types of food that they have out here. But the good thing to know is just know the basics. Know how to order. Know what to do when you're in a restaurant. Just be mindful of your surroundings. And know that tipping is not customary out here. It's not a thing. So I hope that I gave you a bunch of knowledge about things that you can do out in Europe, especially Vienna, Austria, and all the different things about food. But I appreciate you tuning in. If you really enjoyed the episode, I would love for you to share it. If you're watching this right now, just share the episode on your social media. Like, comment, and share. I want people to experience and be prepared for when they do go to Europe. Just watch some of these episodes and be prepared to handle certain things. That's why I'm doing this. I want to make sure that you're prepared when you're coming out here, because it's scary. It's scary being in a new place where you're not familiar with, you don't know the language, but knowing certain customs and what to expect when you're coming out here can relieve a lot of pressure on yourself. So yeah, once again, I appreciate you tuning in. We've got a lot of catching up to do on these episodes, so stay tuned for the next one. I hope that I've inspired you to travel and get out and see some cool things. We only have one life to live. Why would you not go out and see the awesome creation that God has given us? So thank you again for tuning in, and stay tuned for the next episode. We'll be in Prague, Czech Republic. Thanks again.